Alrighty. Not going to recap. Oh, I guess I need to share my screen, don't I? Let me know when you can see it.
Yep.
Awesome. Been over this quite a bit, so we're not going to go over this at all today. We'll just pick up where we left off last time, which was right here, if I remember right. Do you want a recap of anything above?
No, all good.
All good?
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want to wait for Mateo to do this, or do you want to just go through it now?
It doesn't matter. We can push it to whenever. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to wait, that's fine. If not, we can go ahead and he can just see the videos.
Okay.
It's really up to you.
Okay, either one's fine.
Okay. Okay. So raising prices.
Apple.
Yes, Apple. So this is in here because, in my opinion, not most, but many companies in the world could raise their prices without seeing a significant drop in sales. And it would increase their revenue, increase their profits, increase their cash flow. But they don't, in most cases, even consider raising prices pretty much ever. Why is that?
Probably many reasons. Fear. They probably don't want competitors to come in. I mean, they want to keep the prices low. I guess maybe that's a competitive advantage. It depends on the business model. If you're Costco, why would you ever raise price?
Yeah. So, awesome points. They're all 100% correct. Big one is fear. Second major reason is why, if they don't have to, or if they don't think they need to, why do it? Most places don't think about it at all because they have competition and they want to keep those competitors at bay. Those are the main reasons why. So this is where this comes in, pricing power. I think most businesses could raise prices even to, let's say, like 1 or 5% degree with little to no effects on major loss sales. I think some companies could raise prices even higher than that. See's Candy, perfect example. Warren Buffett, when he and Munger bought See's Candies, they knew nothing about pricing power. They were still buying cigar butt stocks and buying stuff that was just undervalued, and that was it. When they bought See's Candies, they found out that they hadn't raised prices in years and that they could raise prices because their brand and their customers were, or their brand was so powerful and their customers were so loyal. So they were, when they bought See's, they were selling at below how do they term it? Below their their cost basis, I think, something along those lines.
They're selling at a loss.
Well, I don't remember if they were exactly selling at a loss, but they were definitely selling at below what they could have. And Buffett and Munger have proved that out over the years by raising price, I think, 10% every year for the last 20, 30, whatever years it's been. It's 1972, so what is that, 50 years almost? They've been raising prices 5 to 10% every year without a meaningful loss in customer base because their brand is so powerful and their customer is so loyal. This is, to me, if you have pricing power, this is a bigger competitive advantage than things like economies of scale, network effects, all the competitive advantages we've talked a little bit about before. I think pricing power is one of the most powerful, but it's also, in my opinion, probably the rarest as well, because companies that can truly raise their prices with losing at a significant degree every year. What I mentioned earlier is maybe raising prices 5, 10, 25% in 1 year. That's pretty common. I think many or most companies could do that. Pricing power in terms of 5, 10, 20% raises in prices every year, that's extremely rare. That comes with Apple, See's candies, probably Hershey's chocolates.
That kind of. Yeah.
Off the top of my head, that's probably it. Off the top of my head. I mean, I'm sure I could come up with more examples, but off the top of my head, those are the only examples I can come up with right now.
They're all consumer product. What about crop?
Probably mostly to a degree, they're mostly consumer products. Or like consulting businesses would probably come into that arena as well. But that, again, depends on how good you are, too. If you are high-quality consulting company or law firm, you can pretty much charge whatever you want.
Yeah, because you're giving the client more value. So it doesn't range it. Yeah, raise the prices, whatever.
So those are more examples. But, yeah, pretty much consumer goods companies with powerful brands. Coke, I think they've raised prices pretty significantly over the last 80, 90 years. I think for a while there it was stuck at like 10 cents.
McDonald's is not cheap now. Every time I go to McDonald's, it's not like cheap, fast, convenient before, right? Now it's not cheap.
McDonald's is a little bit different though, because they have the value menu, and again, this might be different in Australia or Kuala Lumpur or whatever. But in the US, they have the value menu, which is like $1 or $2 things, and then they're trying to
don't have that.
burgers and chicken sandwiches to compete with people like Wendy's.
So it has like okay, got it, yeah. So,
but in my opinion, McDonald's doesn't even have pricing power. Now they have economies of scale, because if they go to they're so large that if they go to their suppliers, they could probably negotiate preferential deals with their suppliers to increase their profit margin.
Right.
So if they tried to raise prices, let's say they raised prices to $2 and $3 on the value menu, and then like $6 or $7 or $8 on the combos to compete more with Wendy's on price, I think they would get crushed, because Wendy's is perceived at least to have better quality food than McDonald's.
It's just like what they call price elasticity in economic, where people are more likely.
Yeah, I think so. That. Yeah. And again, we've talked about this a lot, but I'm not economically or finance trained college guy. But I do know that, and I think they would consider this price elasticity. Yes. So good point.
Interesting.
So
not many businesses have pricing power.
Why is this so important?
Oh, you want to buy a business that has pricing power.
Let's start here. Why is this so important? For the overall, what we're talking about here, focusing on internal assets of the company.
Well, my guess is the cost of doing business is always going to go up every year. That's a given that like you've got to pay, rising wages and all that admin costs. So you're going to have to cover that somehow.
That's a huge part of it. Another major part of it is if you can do it and it doesn't affect or it doesn't bring about a huge drop in customer base and revenue, it increases your profit margins with zero cost increases. That's why it's so powerful if you have this, because it essentially costs you zero in time, money, effort, everything. It costs you pretty much zero in every kind of capital you can imagine. But it raises, let's say your See's candy, and you raise your prices 5 to 10% every year, but your costs don't go up. You increase your profit margins by 5 to 10 percentage points every year. That's how Buffett and Munger, or that's why See's Candy has produced more than $2 billion in operating profit since they bought it for $25 or $25 million. That's insane. That's just every time I think about that, that's absolutely insane. So that is the enormous power of pricing power. But again, it is extremely rare. Extremely rare to be able to do it over the long term consistently. Again, I think most companies around the world could raise their prices 5, 10, 20, even probably 2x in some cases, and not see a significant drop.
Is there a way a company figure out whether if they increase the price, people are going to switch to a substitute? For example, if like, Apple's iPhone is, I think it's gone up by 10% for the last, 10 years or something. And they're obviously smart enough to realize that they can raise price.
So there's a couple things they can do. They can do significant testing, like in focus groups and stuff like that. But until somebody gets the actual product in their hand, I mean, what? Probably just 2 or 3 years ago, no one would want to buy $1,000 iPhone or Android. Now it's pretty common, right?
Quite common, yeah.
So
even 1,500 to 2,000 is like the new norm now in Australia. The premium range, like 2,000 Australian dollars, which is about 1,300 or something. Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, essentially it's by testing. But the only companies that can do that in the cell phone arena are Samsung, which is what I have, and Apple, because they are perceived to have the highest quality phones.
Right.
Is that truth? I don't know. I had a Google Pixel.
I don't think so.
The battery life sucked. So I switched. I had Samsung for years. I tried out the Google Pixel, and I really liked the phone, but the battery life was terrible. So I switched back to Samsung and got a Galaxy Note 9 when I upgraded my phone. My wife has iPhones. So, but in my opinion, those are the only 2 companies that can do that in the cell phone arena. However, is there a point where that gets too high? Let's say they charge $2,500 for a phone. Just based on
yes, I think there is a ceiling on that price. I agree, there is a ceiling.
Though, just based on statistics and the Pareto principle, a decent percentage of people who are hardcore, let's say Apple buyers, would still buy that. They would still buy that phone.
Yeah.
So that comes with the brand loyalty and brand power, or customer loyalty and brand power. So they could probably release a $10,000 phone, Apple, if they really wanted to, and they would see a decent percentage of people buy it. Now, would they take a huge hit on the other side from normal people who are like, oh, who's this $10,000 phone? What is it gonna take us to the moon or whatever? And they might take a hit from that. But
there'll be a low price model for them.
Yeah.
So what's the big deal?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where, to get back to your original point, is essentially it would come down to testing. But just based on statistics and the Pareto principle, there is a kind of a soft ceiling where the higher prices you charge, the fewer people will buy them. But what is that kind of fine line between I'm going to lose a lot of revenue if I charge $10,000 for this versus if I charge $500 for this?
Right.
So it's essentially testing.
I came across an interesting real life situation involving me and sort of like pricing power, but it's like, I wear a hearing aid. So I had to get a new one a few weeks ago because I'm starting work. My old one was just dying and it wasn't very good. And then I went to the audiologist to get it checked, and pretty much I had to buy like probably top of the range one. And that company, have you heard of GN Resound?
GM what?
GN Resound. It's a Swedish company. It's I think it's like 3 or 4 major hearing aid company. Pretty much the aid came out to be about 6,000, about 4,000 or 5,000 American dollar. And as a consumer, if someone with a hearing loss, it's almost like you need it. It's like not negotiable in life. Like you absolutely need it for work. You absolutely need it because it increases the quality of life, and you almost absolutely want to get a mid to top of the range one.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna use it for like the next 3 or 4 years. So it almost like there is some competition, but they do have, I reckon, a bit of pricing power. Costco's a bit chipping away in that because they buy in bulk. But Yeah, it doesn't really matter how much they charge. I will eventually have to buy it.
Well, that's a perfect example. I mean, and this is where the
It's like
capital
7,000.
allocation decisions come into play. Is
Yeah.
it worth my time? Is it worth my effort? Is it worth the extra money it's going to cost to have a either perceived or real higher quality item?
Yeah.
For example, these glasses,
Yeah.
along with your example.
Yeah.
If I don't have good to very good glasses, I feel terrible because of I have to have prisms in here for my dizziness issues. If they're off by even a millimeter, I feel terrible. I get horrible dizziness, horrible headaches, and I just feel awful. I literally can't do anything. So I just got these, 3 months ago? And I think out of pocket, again, I don't know what the insurance covered, but out of pocket, they were, I think, $500, which is a lot for a pair of glasses, right?
Right, yeah.
Same thing for you. So that's, I mean, for us, these are pretty much necessities.
Yeah,
so another way to
negotiable.
Another way to think of areas to look for pricing power is if they're necessities.
Yeah.
This is why dentists are insanely expensive, especially if it's the front teeth.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're in any kind of professional scene whatsoever, you don't want to have a missing tooth or a black tooth.
Yeah, it looks terrible. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're a CEO of a company or a president. People aren't going to take you as serious if you have a black tooth or a missing tooth right here. So that's why dentists can charge enormous amounts of rates, which I wish Mateo was here to talk about this. But my wife and my mom are going through dental issues right now, getting fillings and bridges and root canals and stuff like that.
Yeah, expensive as fucking Australia. Expensive.
It must be a worldwide thing because dentists are insanely expensive here. I think Mateo and I don't remember if you were on the conversation, but I think we talked one time and he said implants can range from like $1,000 to like $10,000 depending on the quality of the implant.
That's why a lot of people go to Southeast Asia to get it done. I mean, I was in Thailand. It was like, I don't know, like 10 to 20% of what Australian charge or something.
Wow.
For the exact same process. In Malaysia, it's probably about less than half of what you're getting.
This is another example of pricing power. Real world pricing power. So even this goes by country to country. So because the cost of living is lower in the Southeast Asian countries, they can charge lower rates.
Right.
But they can also get expats from other countries coming in to get the same, or at least, again, the perceived same quality dentistry work, but at half the price or a tenth of the price or whatever it is. But if, like, for example, when I was in Dubai, there are American, European, Australian companies everywhere. I mean, there's Korean and Japanese and stuff like that as well, but they were typically perceived as higher quality brands.
Yeah.
Because people in Dubai have lots of money and they want to buy higher quality stuff. So again, this pricing power is not just like an individual basis or individual product. I mean, people want to come to the United States from around the world because they perceive the quality of life and freedom and opportunities are higher here than certain other countries. Now, again, I don't know if that's true necessarily 100% of the time, but it's
overall better. There must be some truth to it.
Yeah, no, and again, there is over the history of the United States. Typically, people see more freedom, more opportunity here. There's not really a class system here like there is in parts of Europe and India to a degree. There's not really a class system here that you're stuck in for life. There's an opportunity to move up, all that kind of stuff. So that's where the United States gets a lot of its, again, in this example, pricing power from is the perception and in truth some reality that there is more opportunity, more freedom here. Again, is there similar opportunities and freedom in Australia?
Yeah.
Is there similar opportunities and freedoms in Europe and Southeast Asia to a large degree and probably South America to a large degree? Yes. Is there countries like China and to a degree, and India and the UK, which are more class-based and potentially less freedoms, specifically in China. Yes. But again, from what I've heard from people like you that have traveled all over the place, and my studies with or talks with other people, is in these countries, as long as you don't do stupid stuff, you're not gonna so
yeah. I avoid doing dumb stuff, man. Seriously.
yeah. Oh, and Shafiq said the same thing, because when I went over to Dubai, my wife was worried. She was like, I mean, the typical Middle East thing, they're very strict, they're very but Shafiq said, as long as you don't do anything stupid, you're gonna be fine. They're not gonna stop you for anything.
Yeah.
So, but that's an example of pricing power in kind of a real world sense as well.
Yeah.
So, enormously important. Raising prices and pricing power, enormously important. Another way to think about this is, if I have services or products right now, is there another kind of business model I can go to where I can charge whatever price I want?
Really? Is it?
So this is interesting, because when I went over to Dubai to talk to one of those companies that me and Shafiq are working with, they're in the construction, dewatering, and engineering arenas for, I guess, that arena in Dubai. High costs in equipment, replacement equipment, labor, all that kind of stuff. So that means typically lower margins, because they have to stay competitive on bids, because they bid with other companies over there to get the jobs.
Yeah.
So one of my ideas for them is, because multiple times when I was over there talking to the CEO of the company and other people in the company, they brought up that their number one kind of competitive advantages, in their opinion, is their engineering expertise and knowledge. So my idea for them is to not necessarily get rid of the construction business, but to consult more on the engineering side of things, which is pretty much, again, if you're good enough and you can really pull it off, you can charge whatever you want. So interesting thought, right? So, and I haven't even talked to them about that. That's one of the strategies once they sign up officially, is that I'm going to bring up with them. So that's a little tweak on this as well, is, can I be doing something similar to what I'm doing now that's an adjacency that can get me higher profit margins with a probably similar workload? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's this entire concept, number 5, raising prices, pricing power, enormously important. Obviously, because we spent 30 minutes talking about it, just this one section. Enormously important. And again, like with everything else we're talking about, most people know nothing about this. And if they do, they don't think they can raise prices out of fear, because of competition, for whatever reason. They just don't even really attempt it. Which is, like you said earlier, prices and costs rise over time due to inflation. So if you don't raise your prices over time to match that, at least, your profit margins are automatically going down.
Yeah.
And inflation is a real world thing, even though it's hard to measure in many cases. It's a real world thing. The only caveat to this is, like Japan for the last 20, 30 years has been going through deflation. So how do you think that affects raising prices?
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. But heard from people living in Japan, they complain about how the cost of living is still high, which and the wages are high as well. So it's sort of maybe it's the
yes. So that affects things, because their bubble went up so high, and this is one thing I'm worried about with the United States and these other countries that have a huge amount of debt.
Yes.
Is because, in essence, I think inflation even 2% inflation over the long term is not necessarily a great thing. It's not really a market or real world market thing. It's more manipulation, in my opinion, because if you continue to inflate things over and over and over again constantly, I mean, prices are supposed to go up and down, right? But if you really try to inflate things at 2% every year, which is what the United States government target is, at some point, that's not going to last, which Japan is finding out. There's still, everything's insanely high priced. Wages are great. Cost of living is insanely high. But because prices and everything and costs are so high over there, it's affecting the entire economy in Japan. How? People are getting married less. People are having.
That's true.
They have more people over the age of 80 than they have, I think, teenagers. I think it was the stat that I saw last time, which is just absolutely insane. Over the long term, actually, I saw this was probably 6-7 years ago. I saw an article, and I don't remember where it was, but there was an article that said that Japan is trying to encourage their population. They're worried about it so much. They're trying to get what was the term they used? Their birthing age women or whatever. They're like 18 to 25, 35-year-old women to want more kids because their population is declining and will continue to decline over the years, which is horrible for the economy. They were offering up to $10,000 to come and essentially get Japanese women pregnant.
Is that real?
Again, I don't know if this was real. I don't remember where I saw it. I don't remember where it came from. But I remember reading the article because I was like, what in the world? Again, I don't know if it's real, but I remember reading the article.
I'm sure some guys signed up to that.
Yeah. So this, again, inflation affects pricing power, and this can affect entire economies for, again, how long has inflation been going on now for 20, 30 years? And interest rates are still, what, negative? They're one of the, I think, negative interest rate countries right now with Germany.
Yeah, and then also a lot of Japanese companies, they have, or banks would have a lot of money, and then they just like go buy overseas companies like Dulux Paint in Australia that got bought out, and then they shipped to like Australian company, buying them up.
Yes,
because they can't put it in their own country to use.
So that's capital allocation because they can't figure out what to do with their capital either inside their company or inside their country. So they're going to Australia to find value or growth or whatever they're looking for, and buying over there.
Yeah.
So this is enormously powerful. This raising prices and pricing power, enormously powerful. Any questions on any of that or comments or anything?
No, all good.
Okay. Focus on the strongest cores. So we're still talking about the internal focus of the company. Most companies have more than one product business line that brings in business, if they're of any decent size. So how do you know which is the best? How do you know if you should even be in that business? How do you know if you're going to return on that business or product? This is where the measurement starts to come in for all of this. You have to be able to measure down all the way to individual products. Is it profitable? Is it worth my time? Is it worth my effort? Is it worth my frustration? Is it going to pay off in the future at all? Is it, if it's not profitable now, am I willing to spend the time, effort, money to make it become profitable and valuable?
Yeah.
Am I, like we just talked about a little bit ago, am I in the correct business, or should I be focused on an adjacency that's similar to what we're doing now, but a higher profitability margin business? And this goes, again, all the way down to every product line, every service line, every operational operational area of the business.
Yeah.
Internal cores. What is your most profitable business? Essentially, is what this is. Kodak is a perfect example from years ago. Have you read much about Kodak and their story?
Yeah. Yeah.
So their main core was the print photography for, I think, decades.
Mm-hmm.
They actually were the first to develop digital photography.
Mm-hmm.
They had patents.
Irony.
They had patents on it. They saw it coming. They knew it was coming. They knew the potential was there to take, not necessarily take over, but to take a large part of their business. And they chose to stay in their profitable core instead of transitioning to digital, because that's where they were earning their money then.
Right.
They even forecasted almost 100% accurately the kind of decline and the print photography and the incline or increase of digital photography. Almost 100% accurate. Right. They had all this data and they still chose to stay in their original core business.
Interesting.
Pretty much because they didn't want to take the chance of losing out on that money and losing out on that cash flow and profitability. Now, we see how that's gone. That's gone horribly for them.
They did, if you're a shareholder, you got the shares in the Kodak chemical business, right?
I don't know, to be honest.
I mean, you lost money in the main business, but then they had a demerger.
They either went into bankruptcy or they were about a couple years or a few years ago, and they restructured. But I don't know how they came out of that situation. I know in the United States, growing up, you saw the Kodak brand everywhere. You saw Kodak cameras everywhere. You saw the Kodak photo kiosk everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I've seen anything Kodak related was when me and my wife were in Madrid. There was like one little tiny Kodak kiosk.
Maybe they don't do consumer anymore. They do more like commercial or something.
I don't know, to be honest. I know their business has pretty much not become non-existent, but declined probably by 95% plus since its height. So you not only do you need to focus on your strongest cores, if you're in an industry that is apt to change, which most industries are changing now, you need to be aware of what's on the horizon as well, especially if you are kind of the creator of the next coming technologies, and then you pretty much just say, we're going to keep doing what we're doing to earn profits now instead of taking a short-term hit and then taking over the other industry.
Right.
IBM back in the day with, I think they were in the microprocessing arena. They pretty much, I think they licensed technology to Intel when they transitioned because they didn't think it was going to be a big enough arena. And Intel is domination for 20, 30 years in their industry. That's another example. And IBM, while still huge, is not doing as well as they probably should be.
Yeah.
That's another example.
You know, the funny thing from a shareholder point of view, if you had shared in either IBM or Intel, you would have done either very well.
Yeah.
With either stock.
Yeah.
Which is quite funny to think about.
Oh, yeah. No, and like, I mean, I know I said this a lot, is none of this is straightforward. None of this is either A, we win, B, the other company loses, or it's not necessarily straightforward like that, black and white like that. There's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of art and kind of guesswork to this, but especially Kodak, they had the patents, they developed the technology, they saw it coming, and they still didn't do it. So that is a huge part of this. Another part of this is making sure you focus while you are profitable and earning high returns, is to focus on your strong cores or your strong core or strong product or whatever it is, and not go kind of all over the place. I mean, you can test out adjacencies and stuff like that, but don't just, like most of these companies buy for synergies and stuff like that don't happen. They should instead focus on making their, in many cases, focus on making their internal operations stronger, gaining more market share in their original place or in their original businesses, because they know those more than any other business. They're more comfortable with those. They know more how to fix them. They know where the strong points are, where the weaknesses are, all that kind of stuff. So instead of going to buy another company, that most companies should probably do that. All right. This goes in with the last one. Focus on internal profit pools. So this is different from market share profit pools. This is essentially how much out of let's say an entire industry, let's say the microprocessor industry. Intel, there are competitors. Intel does have competitors.
AMD, right?
Yeah, AMD and some other smaller ones. But Intel probably earns 80+% of the profits in that business, even if they don't have 80+% of the revenue.
Really?
Yes. Again, it's probably close to that. I don't know the exact stats, but it's probably close to that. Does that make sense?
Like licensing and all that stuff?
Yeah. Well, because they're competitive advantages too. They are perceived, again, to have higher quality and the best products in the world in that arena.
Yeah.
And they can churn out.
Hey, I'm gonna ask you something. Do you remember that? What was that company? Oh yeah, what was that? Qualcomm versus Apple in the cellular data kind of, and then they had like a huge litigation, and then they sued each other, and then eventually they came. Was that something related to this, where sort of like the profit pool from that, they're trying to grab onto as many profit pool as they can because they have the patent for the 5G, right?
Yes, and in most cases, it's better to work together than to fight.
Yeah, right.
Because then at least you're both earning something instead of both possibly losing a ton of money just fighting with each other. So does the point about the profit pools versus the revenue make sense? Because that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, like your market share for the whole industry pretty much.
Well, it's different than market share even too.
Is it?
So let's say a company has 80% market share in their market, but they're not as efficient as they could be. They would only earn 50% of the profits in the entire industry.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like Apple has like 20% of smartphone market, but they get like 80% of the profit.
Yes.
Something like that.
Perfect.
Is that true?
Perfect. Yes, it is true. So another example, let's say a company owns, like you just said, 20% of their market, but because of their efficiencies, brand names, competitive advantages, pricing power, whatever, they earn 80% of the profits in the industry. That's enormously powerful. Because essentially that means not only are you earning 80% of the profits in the entire industry, you're leaving the rest of your competitors, Samsung, Google, LG, back in the day, Motorola, to fight over the remaining 20%. Yeah. So you're pretty much always getting further and further ahead, at least in terms of profits and cash flow, than your competitors, which gives you more money to spend on R&D, to buy other companies, to buy back stock, to issue dividends, to do whatever, which is essentially what Apple is doing to take over the cell phone market. Yeah. So this is a very powerful concept as well. But you also need to be monitoring it because these change more often than necessarily entire industries. So are they growing? Are they stagnating? Are they declining? The profit pools. So Kodak, going back to Kodak, their profit pool, they owned 85-90% of the profit pool in the print-off photo market, but it was mass declining very fast. Yeah. So should they have taken those profits and gone into digital, even though in the short term,
hindsight,
they wouldn't. Yeah. There's
everything's easy in hindsight.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But obviously, they should have taken that money
Uh,
from those profits and reinvested it in making the digital photography business part of their business dominate, because they had the Kodak brand name, which is, I mean, still a powerful brand name probably. If you're of a certain age, and my kids probably have never heard of Kodak.
yeah, we have.
Yeah, we have, and our
Uh,
parents have, and stuff like that. But my kids, I bet if they brought up Kodak, they would have no idea what I'm talking about.
yeah.
So again, obviously hindsight bias, but they should have, or they knew that again, they had the data that and they forecasted almost 100% accurately that digital was gonna take off, and the photo kiosk business and hard printing business was gonna decline. What they should have done. They should have transitioned. Again, would they have taken a large hit in the short term? Yes. But they had the Kodak brand name, they had the cash flow to do it, they had the knowledge to do it. And they would have likely taken over that entire industry instead of it being owned by how many different companies now? Fuji is still around.
Sony, Canon, Fuji,
And Nikon. Yeah, all
Nikon.
these brands. So there could have been Kodak digital cameras that everybody's using, pretty much nobody is using now.
Well, now every phone manufacturer is a competitor to Kodak.
Yeah, exactly. That too. So that's another one down the line even further was cell phones, which in my opinion, this was probably harder to forecast than their like the just basic digital photography. Because I mean, we had the flip phones and what was the brand?
Nokia.
Yeah, the Nokia phone that everybody had, and
Motorola.
and all of a sudden, smartphones are huge and they are taking over the entire world. So, and that happened pretty rapidly. That happened within a period of about 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So
now, no one expected Apple to dominate.
No.
Nokia wanted definitely.
Yeah. Well, that's another example. Nokia. It was either Nokia or Motorola, one of the two, had the design and the idea for smartphones before
really?
Apple did. Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes. Well, and before Apple came out with the iPad, Microsoft had their own tablet, but they couldn't take advantage of it because they didn't have the apps. It was just essentially a large phone that didn't have much functionality because it didn't have any apps. So Apple figured out in both of these arenas how to make those products work in terms of phones and tablets on kind of like an everyday basis, and make them very important parts of people's everyday lives.
Right.
Even though they weren't necessarily the first company to come up with these ideas. So Nokia, same thing as Nokia or Motorola. Again, I can't remember which one it was, but they had the idea for smartphones up before Apple did. They couldn't figure out how to make it work. And they focused on their profit pools that were making them cash flow at that time, instead of transitioning. So same thing as Kodak. And Nokia, I don't even think is around anymore. Motorola got bought out by Microsoft years ago. No, Microsoft.
Nokia got bought out as well by Microsoft. Yeah.
So things are changing constantly, but if you see the change coming and you choose not to jump off and take the chance, you're pretty much asking for massive trouble. Nokia.
I'm sure it's harder than it seems. Like if you're running this organization and then suddenly you're like, nah, we're going to do something different. People are going to go, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not going to say it's easy. But if you can forecast out that these things are going to happen, in my opinion, you should at least take the chance. Because if you don't, you're going to end up as nothing. Again, like Nokia, Motorola is around to a degree. I haven't heard of Nokia's name other than like investment case studies in years.
I think they do they don't do the consumer product much anymore. They do the, building towers and all that stuff.
Ah, okay.
Nokia Siemens or something.
I didn't know that.
They do the infrastructure side. They don't really do the consumer division.
Oh, okay.
It's all commoditized now. Like if you want to build a smartphone, you have to use Android pretty much, and there's like
Yeah,
hundreds and thousands of Android manufacturers. So how are you going to differentiate?
exactly. Exactly. Well, that's why even Samsung, that's why Samsung compared to Apple, I think I'm pretty positive Samsung sells a lot more phones,
Yeah,
but their profitability is not nearly as high as Apple's because they don't own the system, they don't have as big a brand name,
yeah.
they don't have as much pricing power, all the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, and I remember Google. I remember Bill Gates said it's you know how like Microsoft didn't invent Android, but they could have, and there was like a biggest loss or something.
Yeah.
Android was such an important thing for Google.
Well, I think there's a licensing agreement. I think Microsoft or somebody had the patents for something similar to Android, and I think now Google pays some licensing royalty fees to Microsoft, but it's not even close to the amount of Android is worth. So they get a part of it, but they don't. Again, they don't own the whole thing like Apple does. And they certainly don't own as much as they could have.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this goes into the last one, or last couple as well. Focus on leadership economics. Where do we either have the lead in economics in our industry, or where can we gain the lead? The top two companies in almost every industry in the world eat up about 80% of the profits.
Just the 20-80 rule?
Yeah, pretty much. The Pareto principle, yeah. Almost every industry in the world, the top two companies eat up about, again, this could be slightly different. It could be 70, it could be 60%, but it's still a large majority of the profits in the entire industry.
Oh, like Facebook and Google for advertising?
Yeah, Facebook and Google for advertising. Perfect example. Apple and Samsung in phones.
Right.
What's another example?
Coke and Pepsi.
Coke and Pepsi.
McDonald's and something, I don't know.
McDonald's, Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's,
KFC.
one of those two.
KFC probably.
KFC's not as big in the U.S.
Oh, really? It's quite big overseas.
Yeah, I know. My team said the same thing. It's not very big over here. Yeah, I mean, video game market, PlayStation, Xbox, or PlayStation, Nintendo, however, depending on how you want to look at it. Stephen King, in writing, he sells more books per year than most of the rest of the authors in the world combined.
Harry Potter, you mean?
No, Stephen King. I mean, when J.K. Rowling was releasing the Harry Potter books, he sold more books of Harry Potter series than most other authors in the world combined.
Okay.
So there's a huge distribution of people at the top.
Winner takes all.
Yeah, pretty much winner takes all. And this is pretty much a natural, the way I've seen the Pareto principle described, is pretty much a natural law. It affects everything from economics down to dominant, like gorillas. There's usually one dominant gorilla, and then there's the females, and then there's like the other males and the kids, and it pretty much works out that way in pretty much every walk of life. So there's going to be winners, and there's going to be losers, and there's going to be fewer winners that eat up more of the profits, more of the cash flow, and the losers are going to fight for the rest, or they're going to have to transition. So that's where this one comes in. And again, you can get as granular as individual products, individual services, or you can think about your entire company. GE, from Jack Welch's days, we're either going to be first or second in our industry, or we're going to sell or shut down your business. That's essentially this model on steroids. Is this a little bit more self-explanatory?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions about this?
Maybe put the put 80-20 rule. I
Yeah.
think people could relate to it somehow.
Your wish is my command, David. There it is.
By the way, have you read the book on JD.com?
No.
I'm reading it at the moment. Quite fascinating. It's like an Amazon of China, pretty much. But the business models is, instead of, you know how Amazon, they control everything except for the last mile. You know, where they get the UPS and blah 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 and FedEx to do it. With JD, they control the entire ecosystem, from the warehouse to the online, then to the logistic.
Oh, really? Amazon's
And
going to that. They're not working as much with USPS and UPS anymore. They have their Amazon employees, I guess.
no, contractor. I don't think they have employees.
Delivering packages more now.
Oh, so they're gonna go into last. Yeah, right. It makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, this is how do you say? What did you express?
So this is the entire section I added after this first session on capital allocation that you and I had, because I realized after watching that video that I forgot some stuff. So here are other things on an internal basis you need to think about with using your cash flow. Should we pay a dividend? Should we buy back shares? Should we pay back debt? Should we build systems in each line of business to increase profitability? Should we do more training to increase profitability and efficiency? Are each of us in the company focusing almost 100% of our time and effort on what we do best? So we're efficient and we love what we do. People that do those kind of things typically are higher performers and they don't suffer as much burnout. This last one is very important and it's a little bit different. Are each of us spending most of our time doing things that will generate what we're worth?
Probably not.
So should I send out that email to try to get clients, or should I focus on servicing clients? What's more worth my time? Should I focus on learning and improving myself? Or should I focus on trying to eke out efficiencies in my business? What is worth more of my time? Should I focus on grand level strategies, or should I focus on individual product line development? Which is worth more of my time? Frankly, it depends on what level. Let's say you're in a company, it depends on what level of the company you're at. If you're a CEO, you should spend almost 100% of your time thinking about grand level strategy, implementation, there we go, to a degree, and capital allocation decisions. Most CEOs spend most of their time, let's say they came out of sales, or let's say they came out of operations, focus on helping the operational side of the business because that's what their knowledge base is. So these are other things that you need to think about when you have excess operating profits and cash flow. These are other things you need to consider on top of the other things we've already talked about. So can you see, we talked about 3 sessions on just stage 1. 3 full sessions, which will end up being about 5 hours on just stage 1. So do you see how this could become very complex very fast?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions on any of these right here?
A lot of the time, people don't know the answer to these, and then
good question.
That's half of this.
So good point. So how do you know? Let's just take the overall. Let's take the 9 stages or 9 parts of stage 1. How do you know what you should focus on? Or how better way to phrase that? How can you figure out what you should focus on?
Well, it depends if your shareholders want dividend. Like Part A, does your shareholder want dividend? In an Australian company, most of the shareholders do want dividend. They want a high percent. They want a franking. They want the credit. I suppose there's an
But
incentive.
is that what you should be doing with your capital, or is that what you're doing just because you think you should do it? Is that the best use of your capital?
No, it probably isn't. But if you don't satisfy your shareholders, what's going to happen? They're going to vote the board out, and then you're going to lose your job as a CEO. So,
Yes. So incentives and emotions play a huge degree in all of this. Let's say you're a CEO of a $10 million company in the United States where dividends aren't as big of a thing. Well, let's say you're a $100 million CEO of a $100 million company where dividends aren't as big of a thing here in the U.S.
right.
How do you figure out what you should focus on as a CEO, as your grand level vision of where to take the company? How do you figure that out? Or how do you begin figuring it out? Because that's pretty much an ongoing thing you need to be worried about.
We'll probably start by talking to the people, your employees and stuff. Then probably figure out where the company want to go and what business line they're in, all that stuff. And then, what the return on their capital is, all that stuff, ROE, and then can they invest it or they can buy back shares or whatever the whole lot. But there seems to be a lot of things they need to think about.
Yes. So it's a bit of a trick question because, like we talked about before, if you're the CEO and you have things set up properly, you should have people under you that you trust that can you as the CEO should come up with the grand level strategies after talking with employees, talking with other executives, talking with board members, talking with everyday employees who make the products or fulfill the services. You should come up with your grand level strategy, and your people should work to implement it. So your sales team should work to hit your sales goals and plans. Your operational, they should come up with plans to, if your operations, to work out efficiencies, to work out cost cutting, all that kind of stuff, without, again, affecting the business. We talked about that when we talked about that part of the things. Mm-hmm. And you should spend your time as a CEO, again, in my opinion, on grand level strategy and capital allocation. So to answer the original question of how do you figure out what best to focus on, is you get data from your people and then you measure the returns. Or the returns you expect, the realistic returns you expect, not the crazy finance, we're going to earn 30% a year no matter what, the realistic returns. Then you can kind of weight them on there. Let's say in operations, you think you can make 20% returns on sales, 10% marketing, 10% whatever. So that doesn't mean you should focus 100% of your efforts on operations. Because if you don't do sales and marketing, you'll pretty much go out of business anyways. But does it mean that operations, at least in the short term, might get more capital? Yes, it does.
Have you thought about like running a business, like running a corporation?
Yes.
Like a big corporation, like 100 million, $1 billion, something. Yes. Okay. That could be a good use of your time. Much more.
Yes, and frankly, I'd have to be paid an enormous amount of money to do that.
Because you have to do study and networking, all that crap.
Yeah, because I think I could do it? Yes.
I think
would I want to do it on a full-time basis outside of my own business?
Right, yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, in the short-term thing, I would if I was being paid very well. But a lot of these things, I mean, they take more than a year. Or they can take more than a year to implement the full strategies.
Right.
So, and actually, it's funny you brought that up because I did bring up to one of these companies we're working with overseas that if necessary, I am willing to come in and help implement these things. Not necessarily be the CEO, but help the CEO implement these things and
Mm-hmm.
there for like a 3-month on, 1 month back with my family type of thing, I'm willing to do that. But I pretty much told them you're gonna have to pay me a lot of money
Well,
to do that.
yeah.
So
I'm sure they can afford.
some of these companies could, yeah.
Yeah.
But frankly, again, I don't, on a short-term basis, to simplify things on a short-term basis, I would be willing to do that.
Right.
On a
I
long
mean, to become a CEO, you need like a lot of skill set, a lot of connection, you need a lot of luck as well to some extent. You need a whole bunch of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Degree, whatever.
Well, and frankly, I would probably ask for a contract that lasts for 5 years.
Right.
Too.
But that's not, they don't have contract for the last 5 years.
I know.
See, yeah.
So,
Like 1 or 2 years.
in the contract, I would word it. I would pretty much tell them up front, this is going to be a long-term strategy. We can make a lot of improvements in 1 year, but to implement everything, it's probably going to take up to 5 years. So either I'm going to be safe from being fired for 5 years, or you can sign me to a 1 year kind of, which is a normal contract for a CEO, just kind of an ongoing basis.
Mm.
But if you decide to fire me at any time, I will get paid for 5 years.
Mm.
Or 5 years salary or whatever.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. But yeah, I have thought about it before. Frankly, I don't want to do that.
No. It is hard work though.
Yeah.
To be a CEO, a lot of responsibility when shit goes wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that doesn't even necessarily bother me. It's the if it's not my company, I would have full control.
Right.
Even as a CEO, you still have to talk to the board of directors. You still have to deal with the chairman. You still have to deal with shareholders if it's a public company.
Yeah.
So not everything is necessarily fully in your control.
Right.
If it's not your own company, like if I was to be brought on as a CEO consultant or CEO, like an interim CEO, whatever. It would have to be a special situation for that to happen.
It feels more like a job.
Yeah.
Than capital allocation more. It's more like try and please everybody and then trying to run the ship, but then you don't really control the ship 100%. But because the company's so big, it's just really hard to affect change. It's like
yeah. Well, if you're an interim CEO, why would people listen to you anyways? It would be very hard to change the company as an interim CEO.
Right.
Because if you're only going to be there for a little while, why should anybody listen to you at all?
Mm.
So yeah, it would have to be a very special situation for me to do that. But yes, I have thought about it before, because I think and
learn a lot as well.
The main difference to me is because I always look to help people and help companies.
Yeah.
This goes back to what you said a little bit ago. It would go from me looking to help as much as I possibly can to kind of managing things.
Yeah, managing people, right?
Which I think I could do it okay, but I think I have a better skill set and mindset for capital allocation than necessarily managing people.
Right. And some people are better at managing people. So
yeah, I'm not, because I'm overly nice a lot of times, so I don't think I would necessarily be the best manager.
Right.
But I think I could do a pretty good job at it if it required.
Right.
So, any questions on anything from stage 1?
No, all good. I think I got most of it.
Is this? I know you say it makes sense. Is it overwhelming to kind of think about?
Yeah. So this is like information overload. It's like your first day of teaching. I think. And wonder, where the fuck's my class? What the hell is going on?
Yeah. So this is why I tell everybody I talk with is, yes, you can learn this stuff, and yes, I will teach you, but it takes an enormous amount of time. It takes a very specialized mindset and skill set and knowledge, and it would probably just be better if I advise you on specific situations how to do what to do. So you can focus on implementing the things in your business, because you know more about your business anyways, obviously, than me just looking at your financials and talking with you for a couple hours or whatever it is.
Yeah,
So
especially
that's
founders.
so that's where a lot of this comes in. But these are legitimate things that you need to think about, or at least know about, for the internal operations of your company if you want to be a good capital allocator.
Right.
And again, this goes as high level as top kind of grand level strategy, or as low as individual products or services. And I'm not saying every single time you come out with a new product or service, you should do every single one of these things, but you should at least think about it. You should at least know about these things so you can build the mental models to figure out these things on not necessarily a fast basis, but a faster basis. I mean, again, it's taken us 5.5 hours in total over 3 sessions to go over just this one stage. You can't do that every single time you bring out a new product line or service. You can't think about these things in depth and analyze them every single time. You would never get anything done. But you should at least know about it and think about it and have people who will think about these things. So,
this is the school that I'm working at has like a separate department for like marketing, sales, operation, finance, HR. You know, like a leadership team, and then there's like staff, and then there's like teaching assistant. This my school is pretty much a business.
Yeah. No.
My school is actually is a business, a private business.
Yeah, and that's frankly how it should be set up. Is there should be a CEO or founder or whatever, president or whatever you want to term the title. They should kind of run the grand level strategy, and then you should have people running the various departments. That's how it should be. That's not how
public school it is. In public school, it's not run like this.
No.
But because my company is a private company.
Yeah.
It's actually based in Dubai.
Oh yeah, I think you said that. Yeah. Maybe you can transfer to Dubai at some point.
I can. I could go, but I'm not really looking forward to Dubai. What's like working there? I don't know. Maybe
I didn't work there. I just was advising and listening and consulting when I was there. So I don't know what it's like to work there on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure it'd be nice. I mean, they pay really well over there. I know that.
Yeah, they pay the teacher quite well salary.
And there's a lot of international schools over there too. I think we passed like 7 or 8.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was I think we passed a German school, a British school, U.S. school, and then other versions of these schools. I think there were 7 or 8 international schools we passed when I was there.
How did that country become so wealthy? Is that oil or what?
It began as oil, and then now in Abu Dhabi is still largely based on oil and gas, from what Shafiq said. And then Dubai is tourism and pretty much doing whatever you want to do.
Doing whatever you want. That's a good industry.
Yeah. The guy who brought me over there, he said if you have enough money, you can literally do whatever you want to do in Dubai. Literally, if you can think about it. I mean, I don't know if I told you this. I told my wife this. There was the 7-star Burj Al Arab hotel over there, and there's a helicopter landing pad on top of the hotel. So if you have enough money, you can literally do whatever you want.
That's becoming quite common in many other countries as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. They worry about like too much money being concentrated in like certain people or certain organization, or it's just becoming increasingly crazy how much cash balance of these major companies.
Oh yeah. Well, the reason their cash balances are getting bigger is because they're worried about recession coming. That's a large reason a lot of these companies are in cash right now, or in a lot of cash, is because they're worried about A, everything's overvalued, and B, they're worried about a recession coming. So they want to be ready instead of hopefully that'll stunt a lot of the massive blow from last time, because that was a lot of problem last time, is they had a lot of debt and they had very little cash. So that's why a lot of companies got in trouble last time. So
it should be better this time then.
Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see.
I have a feeling that the recession that you want isn't coming anytime soon, because the reserve bank going to keep dropping the interest rate.
Yeah.
They're just going to react, and then eventually they're just going to pump more money into the system, and that's going to keep house prices high, and then they keep everything high, and it's just not gonna get. You're not gonna get a GFC that you wanted. Maybe you might get like mild, like shock, but like a couple months or something, but not like.
No, and I don't even really think about it anymore, to be honest. I don't. It's going to happen at some point, but I don't. I'm just going to be ready when it does, but I don't. I agree with you. I think it's going to be sooner rather than later, but I don't think it's going to be like within the next year type of thing.
Yeah, no.
So, all right. Well, any questions on anything we've talked about over the last couple sessions?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. Message me on Facebook or in the group or whatever about when you think you might be able to meet, and then we can maybe set a different time with Mateo.
Well, check with Mateo, but I'd like 8 o'clock, but it might be too early for you.
I get up early every day of the week, so.
Oh, right. It'll be like 7 or 8 your time.
Yeah.
But,
okay. Well, I'll get with Mateo and hopefully responds, and then we can maybe set a different time so you can so we can keep doing these while you're in your teaching job now.
Yeah. All good. All good. I got the personal finance workshop started, but this kid just want to play Monopoly. Okay, right. Whatever.
I mean, you could, like, in certain situations, you could say how this is affected in the real world, but like when they hit the tax, the tax one, oh, this is fun, taxes. You could explain taxes, I guess, but yeah, I mean, that'll get you a little ways, but I don't think they'd probably learn that much from just Monopoly.
Too young. Like most of the kids are year 7 there, year 7 or 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's only a few groups that's year 10. I think they mostly come to play some card game or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna leave it as a social outlet just for now.
I'm sure you'll figure something out.
All good.
All right, bud.
All right, take care, Jason.